Hello to the interwebs. Thank you for stopping by in this clubhouse that is YouTube. The room that you are currently in is called Gymsology. The person talking in this room is Jimso, or you can call me Ure. I am what I would like to call an applied philosopher. Basically, I just use philosophy to understand our human experiences so that we can enjoy life better and make life a little bit better for other people. Topics we've been circling on Topics we've been circling around in this room are Christian theology, economics, business, and finance, relationships, and science and metaphysics. And I recently added one to the list, which is African identity, which is going to be our topic for today. All of these topics are me, I am them, we are one. So I'm basically just talking about things that are currently of interest to me, really close to my identity and how I view the world. And yeah, just sharing my thoughts with the world. I don't know who's gonna be watching this. Literally, like two people could watch this, but I'm like, whoever is watching, just comment if you like this topic or any of the other topics that I talk about. So I know what people want to watch. But as for now, it's really just me and future Ure. That's that these videos are for. Okay. So what do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about a little bit about African identity, discovery, intentional living, and exploration. This is basically just going to be like my experience of it so far and just some thoughts that I have around the whole thing. I'm going to be reading something that I wrote in 2024. I think it was July 2024. It has been a journey since then. So I'm going to be sharing my thoughts, and I'm also going to be sharing just kind of like my experience as an African diaspora. So I was going to say I am a descendant of Igbo people, but I am Igbo. I am Igbo. But I was born and raised in America, in the DMV specifically. I've been back to Nigeria and Igbo land specifically 5 times in my life. The last time I was there was 2018, so 8 years ago. Grew up around African culture specifically, not even Nigerian culture, African culture specifically because the church I went to was African, like African across the board from every region of the continent, except for North Africa, but every other region of the continent was surrounded by all types of African people. So my African identity is very strong. I live in PG County. It's Africa. It's Africa over here. My friends in grade school were African. My friends in boarding school were African. My friends in college were African. Um, and I had like non-African friends sprinkled in throughout. But yeah, I've just grown up around African people like my whole life, and it's just always been a part of my identity. And getting older, I've learned to engage with it in different ways. So, middle school, I started listening to Afrobeats a little bit more, and I'm Nigerian, so it kind of just works out. I am Igbo though. That's probably one of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm Igbo. I'm not just Nigerian. So, a lot of Afrobeats, if even if it is in English, it's being produced by Yoruba people, and they'll mix in Yoruba with their English and all that stuff. So, anyways, side note. So yeah, listening to African music. I've always wanted to learn my language. I started being able to do it a little bit more last year. A lot of the things that I wrote in undergrad, like papers and stuff, um, were related to Nigerian history. I just took the opportunity to learn about Nigerian history myself because I was getting older and I was like, I want to understand like this country that I say that is mine and that I'm always like trying to celebrate. And most recently, when I graduated 2 years ago, I decided to align my career choices with economic empowerment on the African continent. So essentially, my whole life now is oriented towards being an African in the diaspora. And okay, so what I want to talk about? Okay, I have my notes like here. But I'm just trying to figure out if I'm gonna go in the order that's here or in a different order. So where did this whole I think I became a lot more intentional about it in terms of living my whole life intentionally as an African in the diaspora in 2024/2025. One of the things I want to be able to do is have most of my wardrobe be African clothes, whether that's African print, African designs coming from African companies, so that I can showcase like just the beauty of being an African. But okay, where did this all start? So in 2024, as I was distracting myself from anxiety that was coming up from work I was doing, I came across this channel on YouTube called The Medicine Show. Top tier content. Like, it's so good. The Medicine Show is basically a channel that talks about the Igbo worldview or Igbo philosophy in Igbo that is called Odinani. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Igbo is a tonal language, but Odinani, we're just gonna go with that. And I started watching these videos because they were interesting. I think I was looking up a video on Nsibidi, which is a native script, a native writing script from modern day southeastern Nigeria. So not just the Igbo tribe, but the other tribes that were in the area use this writing script. I think I was looking up a video on it, and then I came across his content, and I just completely fell in love with it because he does deep dives on like the Igbo worldview on Odinani, and not just explaining it from like a cultural practices perspective, because in Igbo that's called Omenani, which is the practices, you do the things, versus Odinani is the philosophy behind all of it. And I'm a philosophically inclined person, so it was really interesting for me to sit down and listen to all these things that he's explaining about the Igbo worldview and just learning about Igbo philosophy. I just like completely fell in love. I was also at that time having discussions with my dad about pre-colonial Igbo society because that's just something I've been really interested in for a few years now. And just kind of the ethics of the society. Some things that were really important and I think still are important to this day are things like trade and exchange, diplomacy, freedom, democracy, being egalitarian, responsibility in your community, um, being responsible, having responsibility in your community, being an individual with your own path and your own calling and your own contribution to the community. They were one of the few tribes in the not Igbo specific. Okay, so let me finish and then I'll explain that. But one of the few societies in the area that were against slavery. So if slaves found themselves in this land, they would automatically be freed. Nobody could come in and declare that somebody is a slave. And I'm trying to think of like all of these other peace. I said diplomacy, but I meant like peace. So they didn't have like military or army or anything like related to that sort. It doesn't necessarily have to be institutionalized, but they didn't have that because they prioritized diplomacy and all this stuff. And they had a really big influence in like their local area. And I was talking to my dad about it. This society is called Nri Society. So there are two major pre-colonial Igbo societies, the Nri and the Aro. But I'm talking about the Nri Society. I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, how in the world they build a society like this? Like, because it's resembling the things that the Western world claims are their ideals and are a result of being founded on Christian principles. But these people built the society before being introduced to Jesus, as far as I'm aware of. As far as I'm aware of. And actually, when Jesus was introduced into the society, the way that he was introduced actually caused the society, I wouldn't say collapse because it didn't collapse. The Igbos resisted colonialism. They fought the good fight. They fought the good fight, but it caused the society to become highly distorted and like a bit chaotic compared to what it was before. And so then I started this whole thought process of like, what was it that was actually introduced and what was it that caused society to be like this? And my dad was telling me, he was like, it's their spiritual beliefs. And I was like, huh? Huh? Because like we're Christian, right? My family is Christian. I grew up Christian. So for you to say something like that is like, do you know what you're saying to me? So I'm gonna read what because I ended up writing something about it because I wanted to go on this whole deep dive exploration. And it's definitely gonna be something that's gonna take me years to really do. Um, but yeah, let me just go ahead like and read it. I write well. I just want to say that. I think this is really, really well written. Okay. I feel like I'm about to burp. Excuse me. Okay. Stumbling across Odinala Allah is another way to say the word Ani, Odinani. It means land. But stumbling across Odinani and learning about it, I realized that Inri philosophy and the subsequent culture are very aligned with Jesus and the ideals that the Western world claims are theirs based on Christianity. But when the colonizers came, they also brought their cultures and beliefs, within that being Jesus. However, we didn't just get Jesus, we got selfishness, disrespect of the land, domination, divisiveness, and so many other things Europeans were still grappling with. They gave us their culture and told us it was Jesus. They looked at ours and said it was the devil. They not only introduced chaos and confusion through their colonial project, but also through their cultural desecration that forced us to hate who we were and love who they are. Thankfully, we still have remembrances of who we are, although very tainted in the mainstream, but there are those who have remained committed to their heritage and who share the knowledge. Abum Onyibo Mwachukwu, a follower of Jesus. It can be confusing holding Jesus in Odinani, especially when it has been so demonized by those who introduced us to Jesus. But in knowing Jesus personally and exploring Odinani, I can't help but wonder if Ndibo didn't already know Jesus more than the colonizers that believed they were introducing him. So, in this research, I want to understand how Jesus fits into indigenous beliefs, most of which are completely misunderstood through colonial Christian eyes, and many of which already hold the primary tenets that Jesus taught. Okay, I think there's a second part, but I don't know if that's relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I wrote, and that's like the thought process that I was having because as someone who's very grounded in my faith, specifically in a personal relationship with the Trinity, hearing that this society that seemed very appealing to me and seems again like the ideals that the Western world is trying to uphold and going around the world and claiming that they are bringing to other people was there from what would seem to be a different set of spiritual beliefs and spiritual foundation. And so I just got really curious about that because I'm convinced about Jesus. Like you're not gonna deconvince me or de-influence me from following Jesus. But I think Christianity is a whole different thing than following Jesus. Simply because anything that we as human beings receive is going to be contextualized and understood within a certain culture. And the package that it was brought to my people came with 1900 years of history mixed in. Ancient Jewish history, the Roman Empire, medieval Europe, the Renaissance scientific revolution, European just like history, colonial history. So by the time it arrives to us, it has gone through all of this cultural history that it's not even just like Jesus is being brought, but Jesus plus Europe's understanding and contextualization of the message of Jesus all on top of it and being brought as this is the truth. And because the Europeans were unfamiliar with, I'm going to say Igbo, but I think just like African in general and indigenous in general, because they didn't just colonize Africa, because they were very unfamiliar with indigenous ways of life, they automatically saw our ways of living, and called them savage, backwards, uncivilized, and demonic. Yay! Yay! um, and so this project that I set out to do was basically trying to uncover what parts of Christianity are actually like the message that Jesus was trying to convey and what parts of it are the culture that was that it was contextualized within and the culture that it was contextualized within that still needed to be redeemed by the message of Jesus. And okay, where am I? Because this is not what I had written down and I'm already 15 minutes in, but where was I going with that? Um, so yeah, it started this whole exploration of trying to understand like I think I tended towards more so the understanding the cultural history of Christianity, but it also made me very interested in understanding the pre-colonial history, even more than I already was, of Igbo society or Nri society specifically, and just what it meant to live as a member of that society. Because I just have no context for that. Like, okay, maybe not no, but like very little context for that. Because I'm born and raised in America, in 21st century America, that has very specific cultural ideals, and it's very specific history that has led us to this point. But then also realizing, like I said earlier, a lot of the things that are prided as like being American ideals are actually very foundational, and I would say even more foundational to Indian society than what is going on in this country. Just saying, more foundational than what is going on in this country. And I think I'll probably spend the rest of my life trying to understand like what this like what it means to live intentionally as an Igbo person. And then for anybody else that's African, like what it means to live intentionally as whatever culture or ethnic group you come from. And this focus on being Igbo specifically is also like a pre-colonial discovery because Nigeria only exists as a colonial project. That's the only reason why it's there. We can, I mean, it's been here for like 60 plus years now, but the reason it exists is purely because of colonialism. A whole bunch of different ethnic groups were brought together and basically told to be one country outside of their own will. They didn't choose that. And identity before then was grounded in like societies that were already established. Inri society, Aro, Benin, Oyo. I don't know if Ifa was a society, but all of these different societies. And if I'm trying to understand what it actually means to live as an African in this world, I think I need to go back to how Africans actually established their identity before colonialism like came into place. Now, obviously, like history is a bit more complicated. It's a bit more complicated than that, because identities shift based on geopolitical interactions, economic interactions, social interactions, and things like that. So colonialism is always going to be a part of, unfortunately, it's always going to be a part of African identity moving forward, just because it was such a monumental part of our history. And I don't know if there's a way for me to be Igbo without being Nigerian in the 21st century. And there are ways that it has completely like reshaped like these identities that it's I don't think in my lifetime or even in my great grandchildren's lifetime like that's going to be undone. I just highly doubt it. So even accepting the fact that like I'm trying to rediscover what it means to be an African from a pre-colonial self-determined lens, understanding that that is never going to be fully separated from our colonial history. And it is sad. Like it's a bit sad just because of the amount of damn oh Jesus. Like this just it infuriates me. Fury it's not a word. Whatever. It infuriates me. It enrages me. Like it makes my blood boil to think of like the amount of damage that was done and that is still being done to the colonized world. Like this is where I have solidarity, like with the whole world, because like cultures were destroyed, ways of lives were destroyed, identity was destroyed, history was destroyed, and we're still trying, like to the point where there are Africans who identify more with their colonial history than their tribal history because they just don't know. That's just the world that they live in. That's the world that they're brought into. Anyways, yeah, thinking about it just makes me so mad. It makes me so mad because I think our cultures were beautiful, just like any human culture is beautiful. Obviously, we have our downfalls, we have our shortcomings, things that can be improved, but we had societies. We were a country. We were a country. Yeah, and it just it makes me really sad to think about that. But I would rather focus on decentering as much as is possible, because again, African identity is intimately tied to our colonial history at this point. Like you just can't separate it. But I would rather spend most of my energy rediscovering as much of the pre-colonial way of being as I can, instead of focusing on how much damage was done by colonialism, because I think that is still centering the West and our colonizers in trying to rediscover and focusing on like how maybe we were oppressed and how things are so bad now because of them. It's like, yes, all of these things are true, but they're not like focusing on it, knowing good and well that they are not going to remedy what they did. They have no interest in doing that. It is not aligned with their incentives at all. Is not doing anything for us. And it does us much better to reclaim our identities, our stories, our languages, our ways of writing, our architecture, our philosophy, our worldviews, our like economic and political systems. It does us much better to focus on that and reclaiming that and putting that back into its proper context as much as we can than focusing on the damage that has been done, because that's not going to get us anywhere. Um, I've actually hit on like almost all of my points, but yeah, I just that's it's like a bittersweet thing. Some days it's really sweet because I'm like learning a lot, and other days it's just like, oh, will we ever be free? Like, will we ever be free? And there's only so much that I can do as one individual. But one thing I really want to do, this is one thing that I'm like really passionate about. It's up there with like God and economics. Is bringing dignity back to the African identity on the world stage. So professionally, I'm doing that through my economics degree, businesses that I want to start, advising that I want to do when it comes to economic empowerment, but also living very intentionally as an African as much as I can. So in things like basically what I'm engaging with on a regular basis, music that I wear, I mentioned earlier, music that I wear, music that I listen to, and not just like pop Afro beats, but like cultural music, like listening to more high life, listening to more Ogene music, listening to more. I even need to learn, like I need to learn these things. Um, Music, clothes, art, language, worldviews and philosophies, stories, ways of being, relationships. I'm just reading what's on here. Writing scripts, beauty, what like Africans prioritize as beauty. There's one in Igbo society called Uli. I don't know if it's like henna or if it's like actual tattoos, but basically it's body art. It's body art. And so just like and then like our all the different like wonderful hairstyles that they used to do that were just like this is artistic. So like doing like trying to live intentionally, like trying to be instead of talking about it and thinking about it, trying to be it and see like how it feels to be African as much as I can be while living in the West. I also have a desire to, at some point in my life, not move back to Nigeria 100%, but like spend a good amount of time there, like each year, like 3 to 4 months. I'm spending my time there, like 3 to 4 months minimum. I'm spending my time there each year, and hopefully my work will be able to allow me to do that. In terms of traveling, I am not interested in going anywhere until I visit multiple African countries. Excuse me, and I'm certainly not interested in going to Europe. Like, so sorry to the Europeans, not interested. There's so much other world out there to see. Like, take me to South Asia before you bring up Europe. Take me to South America before you bring up Europe. Like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be there. Like, I just don't. So things like that, just being extremely intentional in the ways that I'm living my life, in the ways that I think. I remember like learning some of these ordinary principles and like trying to like orient my thought processes around it. It's really hard. It's really hard, but I think it's gonna be worth it. And I just want to talk about that more. Things that I come across, things that I'm thinking about. And do I have anything else? I think good job for me. I should start writing my notes at the beginning more because I write them down and it's already in my brain what I want to talk about, but I don't even have to like look at them to go through everything. Oh, okay. One thing that, oh, excuse me. I think another like part of this is this idea of modernizing and like cultures being dynamic and changing like to the circumstances that they're in. Because, like I said, African identity unfortunately is very tied to its colonial history. That's not going to change. And in this pre-colonial discovery project that I'm doing, it's like how do you engage in that way while still being not just like an American in the 21st century, but just a 21st century individual. Like circumstances have changed over the last 150 years that it's like some of the ways that people were living back then, they're not relevant to how life is now. But then even like the process of the world modernizing is largely a result of America, the imperialist power of the world. And yeah, it's just like so many things like to think about because it's like first one, I'm not bashing this country. I love the infrastructure of this country and the ease of life that it is able to provide. But I like when you start learning about philosophy, you start realizing how ways of life influence every single thing that is done. There is nothing that is untouched by ways of life. And even modernity and progress and innovation comes out of ways of life of a society. And so, like, innovations that have led to a lot of progress coming out of America are still informed by American ways of living that have European histories and colonial histories and imperialist histories. And just thinking about what would like progress and innovation and modernity look like from a Native African perspective. And then how do we incorporate Native African perspectives into the world that we find ourselves in the 21st century? I don't know. That's why I'm here. If you want to talk about it, let me know because I need more people to talk about this with. But I'm really hoping as I like start talking about this more to inspire more African diasporates to be very intentional about how you are living. Because the only people that are going to elevate African identity and African ways of being is Africans. We are the only ones that can do it. And not even just African diasporans, but Africans across the board on the continent, like as well. We need to reclaim like our narratives and our stories and our ways of life and elevate them to the same level as the rest of the world. We shouldn't like the world should not see us as less than or as like the annoying little brother, which is just so crazy given the history. But that's how we're seen. It should not be like that. We should be on equal footing. Like our culture should be respected the same way that their cultures are. And I think like even thinking about things like how um like Asian culture has seeped into American culture, things like K-pop or all the different like Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Indian restaurants or Buddhist philosophy, Hindu philosophy and ways of life. These things just have infiltrated American life. And obviously they come here to get Americanized. That's what cultural exchange is. But the same way that like those things have infiltrated American life is the same way I wonder what life would be like if African ways of being could just infiltrate, just mix the way that they're supposed to be mixing, you know? Um, Instead of it just being like one way, like Africans import American culture, what would it look like for the reverse to also happen? So, yeah, be the change you want to see. I'm trying to do it. I implore you guys, I implore you guys to do the same. If you're not African, if your heritage is from South America, Do the same if your heritage is from Asia, any part of Asia that has been colonized. Please do the same. I even hear there are some countries in Europe that were colonized, like Great Britain. The Scots were colonized. People from Ireland were colonized. Anyone that has experienced like colonialism in their recent like cultural history should do the same. Rediscover what your pre-colonial like cultures were, understand it, be intentional about living it out, and just see what life could be like if you were fully you. Okay. There were so many other things that I could have talked about. This video was 30 minutes. Again, I genuinely don't know how I end up talking this long, but now that this is a topic that I have thoroughly introduced, we're going to do multiple videos on this because I love it. I love talking about this. Yeah, that's all I have. All right. Thank you for stopping by. To the next one.